Good job. How are you today?
Doing fine.
Good. My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated. Today is,
23rd.
thank you, February 23rd, 2020. And we're at the Lake Mary Marriott by Orlando.
Lake Mary, yeah.
All right? Okay. And what is your name, sir?
Cal Posner.
Okay. And when is your birthday?
The 2nd of September, 1942.
Okay. And your current address?
4440 Strathmore Drive, Lake Wales, Florida.
Okay. Where were you born?
Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay, and what branch of the service?
Army.
Okay. And where were you when you enlisted? Were you enlisted or drafted?
Oh, I enlisted in Baltimore.
Okay. What were you doing at the time?
Well, I was a senior in high school.
Oh, okay. All right. Were you in ROTC?
No.
No. Okay. Why did you choose that branch of the service?
Well, my dad and two of his brothers and my mother's older brother were in the Army in World War II. And I had one, my mother's younger brother had been in the Navy in peacetime, and he wanted me to go in the Navy and took me to the Navy recruiting office. But they just wanted me to sign up for 4 years and they'd make all the decisions for me, and it didn't sound like a fair deal to me, so.
And who was that? Your parents?
No, that was the Navy.
Oh. Okay. All right. So you backed away from that.
Yeah, and went in the Army, and I have never regretted it for a day.
Okay. All right. Okay, you Baltimore. So from Baltimore, where did you go to basic training?
I went to basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Okay, and how long was the basic training?
It was supposed to be 6 weeks, but they forget to tell you about 0 weeks. It was actually 7 weeks.
Added one on, huh? Okay. What were your instructors like?
They were very competent, very professional. I met one of them several years later in Heidelberg, and of course he didn't remember me. He had hundreds,
Yeah.
People going through. It's back in the '60s, but I remembered him. And he had just arrived in country, so we invited him and his wife over to our apartment for dinner, and we shared some stories, and it was very nice.
That's good.
Yeah, it was.
And that was in Germany?
Yes, I met him in Germany in the parking lot of I forget the command, but it was a major command, and I was going out of the building to the parking lot. He had just parked and was coming in.
Right.
And we just kind of passed, and I stopped.
Yeah.
And I said, "Sergeant Bennett."
Right. Yeah.
He turned around. He said, "Are you one of my boys?" And I said, "Yes, I am."
Right. Okay. Did you go to tech school? Of course.
Yes, I did. I went to excuse me. I went to Signal School at Fort Gordon, Georgia.
How long? How long was it?
That was 8 weeks.
What were the instructors like?
They were very, very competent, very helpful. This was in the days of chemical photography before digital photography.
Chemical? Oh, you mean film?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So
right.
So you had to learn a lot of chemistry, and you had to learn about flash points and and how you process paper, film, how you stored each differently. You had to learn how to control water temperatures and things like that. So it was very technically oriented.
What was your job?
I was a combat photographer with an 84 Bravo.
Okay. What cameras did you use?
He used 35 millimeter
Nikon?
Nikons, yeah. The Army had a contract with Canon, but Canon lenses were screw-ins
Right.
then.
Bayonet.
Yeah, and in Vietnam, you could watch them rust. So we used to take them up when the helicopter pilots were going out in free fire zones and just throw them out the door, and the pilots would write them up as losses, and then we'd go to the PX and buy Nikons.
Okay. That was a good one. All right. So your tech school was how long?
8 weeks.
Anybody get hurt through basic and tech? Any casualties? Anybody?
None,
Injuries?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. All right. So after, did you go on leave?
I went on leave after basic training, and from Fort Gordon I went down to Fort Benning to go to jump school.
Oh.
So that's 3 weeks.
Of jump school?
Huh?
3 weeks of jump school?
Yes.
Okay.
Again, the Army always forgets to tell you about 0 week, but
So it's supposed to be 2 weeks?
well, it's supposed to be 3, and it ends up being 4.
4. Okay. All right. Gotcha. They forget, huh? All right. So after jump school, then you went to tech school, or you were done?
No. I went to tech school first, and then I went to jump school, and then I got my first assignment
To
Fort Hood, Texas, the 1st Armored Division.
and how long? What was your job, and how long were you there?
Oh, okay. I worked for the 1st Armored Division newspaper, and I was a staff. Now they're called photojournalists, but I was actually, the slot I was in was staff photographer, but we were expected to write our stories, and so we had to collect all the information and everything.
Right.
And that's where I really began to learn how to write and things. So yeah, I was only there 3 months. I was private, first class, and I came down on a set of orders for Vietnam, and the orders, the single order was that thick, and everybody on it was an E4 and below.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Fort Hood, how long were you there?
I was there just over 3 months.
Okay. So where'd you go after that?
Well, after that, I was supposed to go to Vietnam, and we were on the chartered airplane over there, and at some point during our flight, the Pueblo was taken.
Oh.
And every other aircraft going to Vietnam went to Korea.
Okay.
So but nobody told us,
Right. Surprise.
Yeah. So we're
It's like that 0 week.
Yeah. So we're all in jungle fatigues and no underwear, which is the uniform of the day, and they land at what I later discovered was Osan Air Base, and plane lands and the doors open and everybody's going out, and there was again, I'm still a private, and there was a master sergeant sitting across from me on the aisle, and we get up and we're going down, and he makes the turn to go outside,
Right.
and he turns around and he looks at me and he said, "Kid, I don't know where we are, but we are not in Vietnam." It was like 30 degrees out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty interesting actually how they did that, and I was just an observer. I didn't organize it or anything.
Right.
But they had to find places to sleep for all these incoming soldiers.
Right.
And so they would put you on a bus, and the bus driver would drive around, stop, run into a building, see if there was any room in there. And then he would say, "Okay, give me 2 people,"
Right.
And
Move along.
So I ended up spending the night on the pool table in the officers' club.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they came and got us in the morning, and bussed us down to what used to be called ASCOM City, Army Support Command, and that's where all the incoming soldiers came, and then they went to their units out of there.
Right.
and again, it's in the 60s, there's no computers, everything is manual, and, you know, and so it was interesting. And I was there a couple of days, and everybody who had come in on my flight, they were all gone.
Wow. Okay.
And so I'm in this big, long barracks building with double bunks and a space heater about every 30 yards or so.
Right.
By myself. And there was a big fence outside with wire on top that you couldn't leave. And they had a little squawk box, and you had to wait for them to call your name and go out to the gate. And then they would hit a button, and the gate would open, and it was Company Street. You went across the street, and there was the company headquarters building was there, and you went in, and they gave you your assignment, and you left. And
Right.
and finally they called my name, and I went up and hit the button, and they hit the button on their end, and the gate opened, and I went in, and the first sergeant was there, and he said, go in there, and he pointed to the door, and the door said commanding officer. And I'm thinking, I haven't done anything, you know. What do they want to see me for?
Right. Yeah.
And so I walked in, and there was a guy there in a coat and tie, sitting at the captain's desk. You know? And I didn't know whether to report, you know, or what. And he just said, have a seat. And I said, okay, and sat down, and he kind of looked me up and down, and he said, I understand that you're pretty good. And I said, well, I hope so, you know. And he said, well, how would you like to work for me? And I said, well, who are you? You know. Well, it turned out he was a Sergeant First Class Chuck Whitmire, and he was the bureau chief of the Korean Bureau of the Pacific Stars and Stripes.
Oh, okay. There you go. Okay.
So when he told me that, I didn't care who he was. That's a dream assignment.
Right. Yeah.
So I said, absolutely.
Right.
He says, okay, get your stuff, and I've got a black and white Falcon station wagon in the front. Just stow your gear in the back, and I'll take care of the paperwork.
Right.
Yes, sir. You know. And so we drove into Seoul, and we lived in a Quonset hut that was on the street above the K-Mag Club. And we lived across from the Army sharpshooting team, you know, the pistol team. And so they had all the odd units were up there. And yeah, so I was there for a year, and it was my first real, you know, assignment. It was overseas, and even though the Korean War wasn't still going on, whenever the North Vietnamese wanted to get some attention, they would send people in from, you know, a submarine to a town, and they would shoot it up, and, you know, and cause a stir and everything. So it was I was in civilian clothes all the time over there because it was DOD.
Right.
And they didn't want anybody to know who you were because you interviewed the people that you had to, and some of them were general officers and stuff, and so, you know, if you're in a coat and tie, they don't know who you are. So, but it was a really good tour, and I really enjoyed it. And
how long was it?
It was a year. It was 13 months.
Okay. So, any casualties? Anybody get hurt? And from basic training to tech school to Fort Hood, right?
Yes.
And to
Yangsan, Korea.
How was the food?
It was okay. I mean, it's institutional food,
right?
You know, but I mean, it was okay. And we were, once I got to Korea, I was on a separate ration, so we could eat in restaurants. And
how was the food?
Korean food isn't very good to Western taste,
okay.
Especially authentic Korean food. If you eat it in the States, it's westernized.
Got it. Yeah.
But when you're in Korea, it's.
What were the people like on the economy?
Oh, they were very nice.
Were they?
Yeah. Had an opportunity to meet several people, and they were all very nice, very courteous. I think the only thing in common that they all had in common was that they all hated the Japanese. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, because of the war. So. But.
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting tour. The Koreans I met were all very nice and professional and friendly, and people I worked with were really good people. And
there was no conflict with the Koreans?
None that I was aware of.
Good. Did you have any interaction as far as North Korea?
Yes. Whatever unit you're assigned to in Korea, sometime during your first month, they schedule you to go on a bus trip up to the zone, up to the DMZ.
Really?
And you go up, and you walk up this ladder, and you look over into the DMZ, just so you know why you're there.
Right.
Okay. And so that was my first time in the zone, and then. When the Pueblo crew was returned, it was a big international media event. And they took all the people who were in, at that time it was called Army Information, and now it's called Public Affairs, but
right.
It took everybody, and they, in order to handle this influx of international media. So I was a Spec 4 then, and I became a bus captain for international media.
Oh, okay.
There were 6 buses of them going up to see the exchange, and the Koreans were very specific about the zone. So as soon as you go into the zone, you have to pull all the windows down. If you're in a train or a bus or a car.
Close the windows.
Yeah. Well, the shades.
Oh.
Okay. And no pictures are allowed.
Right.
And they're really serious about it.
It's like being on a troop train going to Berlin.
Absolutely. So there was a captain who was in charge of the buses, who I was detached to, and his last name was Gelke, Captain Gelke, and he gave us our instructions. He says, you have to tell these people that we're serious, and they have to keep the blinds down. They can't take any pictures in the zone, and they can only start taking pictures once the bus stops, once we're in the Peace Village.
Right.
And I said, yes, sir. And I was armed with a .45, but it didn't have any bullets.
Right.
Nobody'd be dumb enough to give a signalman an actual loaded weapon, So I had a bus full of foreign journalists, and told them, no pictures, blah blah blah. Gave them the speech. They all agreed, and so this convoy takes off, and they were really pretty good. And we got to the zone and made sure all the blinds were down, and no pictures. And we started. We weren't 10 feet in the zone. All the blinds came up, and they started taking pictures out the windows. And I'm a kid, I'm a Spec 4,
Yeah.
And I got 45 guys with cameras with big lenses, going out of both sides.
Everything they could get, right?
And they didn't care at all. And it's only a short ride up into the village anyway.
Yeah.
So we get to the village. They get off the bus and they run to get a spot, And I went up to Captain Gelke and reported, and I said, sir, I have to report that I failed in my mission, I said, as soon as we got, in the zone, then all the blinds came up and they were taking pictures on both sides. And I failed you, and I deeply regretted it, and I'm sorry. And he said all the buses did it. He said, and I knew they were going to do it because that's their job. He says, I told you what I had to tell you. That's what they told me to tell you. You know? So I did my job. You did your job. Everything's cool. Don't worry about it. I said, yes, sir. Thank you. And I remember his name because I ran into him later in my career. But he was a really good guy, and I'm still in contact with his wife and daughter, and now we're down to just Christmas cards. You know?
Where are they at?
They're in Indianapolis.
Okay. Where'd you go after Korea?
After Korea, I went on leave, and while I was on leave, I get a phone call from a guy an officer that I had met when I was in Europe. I'm sorry. I get a call from a guy that I had met in Korea.
Okay.
And I'll tell you about Europe later.
Yeah.
But he said, I just got my orders for Vietnam, and I'm going to the 101st
Airborne
Division of Vietnam. He says, how would you like to come with me, and we'll assemble the best photo team in the Army? And I said, oh, I just got back from Korea. I'm done with overseas. I've got less than a year left, you know.
Right.
And he says, Cal, you don't understand. This is just a courtesy call because I know you. You're coming, you know.
Okay. That's an order.
Well, he never said that, but
okay.
But then I got the orders, and
right.
Sure enough, so I go.
How long were you in Vietnam?
13 months.
Go ahead and tell me about it.
Well, I got there in December of 1968. Airplane landed at Cam Ranh Bay, and I was there a couple days in processing, and a captain and a master sergeant came over to where I was at, and they said, how would you like to be in First Log, which was the first logistics command that was right there in Cam Ranh Bay.
Right.
And I looked around. Cam Ranh Bay seemed to be a pretty good place, and I said, well, I do have orders for the 101st. He says, well, if they call you, tell them you're sick and you can't travel. He says, because it's going to take me a day or two to get those orders, changed.
Right.
And I said, okay, and but as it turned out, it was like just over the next day. I got called in the morning, and this guy gave me his card, and I asked the first sergeant if I could use the phone, and he said sure. And so I called him up. I said, they're putting me on the plane up, to leave now. Either you got them or you don't. He said, no, I don't have them now.
Right.
It'll be another day or so. I said, well, I'm sorry. I'm heading up to Fubai, so we went back to the Strip. I got on the C-130, and we flew up to Fubai Airport. I call it an airport, but it's more like a farm road.
Right. Okay.
And we landed, and the 101st was about 3/4 of a mile away up the road. And they came and got several of us actually.
Right.
And we went up to the headquarters area of the division at Camp Eagle. And they threw us off and our duffel bags off. And the sergeant major came out, and
And what happened?
okay, well, he introduced himself.
Hey. Go ahead. What happened?
So he introduced himself, and
Go ahead.
Okay, and he took the packet of personnel files that the senior person in our flight was carrying,
Right.
and he went through them, and we were all standing there in formation, and he said, finally got to me, he said, Posner, he says, okay, you're in the information office, and that's right up the road here on the left. And I said,
Right.
yes, Sergeant. And so I went up there, and that's where I met Major Horvath, who was the division chief of information. And he kind of showed me around that area, and then gave me the bad news, which was, he says, you can't be a combat photographer and not be in combat. So I'm going to send you up to the 3rd Brigade, up at Camp Evans, and you'll go out with them on patrol.
Uh-huh.
And okay, and so that's what I did. I got another C-130 ride up to Camp Evans, and in order to fly into Camp Evans, in a 130, the pilot goes like this, and then he goes literally like that.
Wow.
Levels up, pulls the nose up just in time, levels off, they drop the back door, and everybody runs out.
Did you land or did you parachute?
Oh no, we landed,
Okay.
but we never stopped moving.
Oh.
Okay, so he's going this way, we're all going that way.
Yeah, out the back door.
They release the pallet that has our duffel bags on it, and it slides out.
Right.
And he goes up, turns around, takes off.
It's like a hit and run.
And so I'm thinking, what the heck is this,
Right.
you know?
Uh-huh.
And then on the other side of the runway, you could see puffs of smoke and stuff that he could see because he was in the cockpit. We couldn't see. We were
Right.
inside. And they were walking in either 122s or mortars in on us.
Right.
And they wait for the airplanes to land because then they're much easier targets than when they're flying.
Did they get him or not?
No, they
Thank
didn't.
God.
No.
Okay.
No, he took off okay.
All right, so tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences as a combat photographer while you were in Vietnam. First of all, how many, you were there for 13 months, right?
Yes, sir.
And what year was it?
Well, it was actually 1969. I got there December 68, and I left January 70.
In your guesstimation, over the 13-month period, how many casualties were there that you were aware of?
Oh, thousands.
You saw, I would imagine you saw a lot of...
Yeah, I mean, I was at Dang Ia, and they were taking body bags out by the Chinook load.
What is that?
A Chinook is one of those big double-bladed helicopters.
Uh-huh.
You know,
How many fit in there?
well, I'm not sure.
Yes.
I would think 100, 150, and that line never stopped. Officially, later, they said there was 87 casualties. Of course, everybody broke up laughing when they heard that. You know?
Okay.
And
So what was it like? Give me two of your most memorable experiences as a combat photographer in the field.
okay, in the field, certainly Dang Ia, which later became known as Hamburger Hill. That was probably the worst thing that I was witness to. And
How far up the hill were you?
huh?
How far up did you go up the hill?
Oh yeah, that's
To the
my
top?
job. Yeah, yeah,
To the top?
yeah. I've got pictures. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you could send me some, I'll put them in here.
I've got them in my
Okay.
thing there. So.
All right.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was pretty much the worst thing. And the other, it turned out not to be a major battle, but we went into the Ashell Valley and retook it. And I went in with an Air Force Pathfinder team,
Uh-huh.
and the night before, and you know we're there at night, and these two guys start building a campfire,
Right.
and I asked them what they were doing, and they said, well, we're building a campfire. I said, you can't have a campfire out here. You know what they call campfires out here? And they said, what? I said, targets. You know, can't.
Why not?
You can't go campfire there. And this one of them said to me, he says, stand up and look around. And I did, and there must have been a dozen campfires out there. And of course, it's nighttime. You can't tell if they're ours or they're NVA's.
Right.
You know.
What does NVA stand for again?
North Vietnamese Army.
NVA, gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, I was like the lowest ranking guy there. Was a Spec 4 and an E4, and so then one of these Air Force guys goes into his rucksack and he pulls out a guitar case. And they're singing country songs.
Just going at it.
Yeah, in the middle of the A-show at night before. You know, we're supposed to come in and invade. Well, you know, I knew that the 5th Mech was just over the rise. They were coming in first thing in the morning.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I'm sitting in the Florida A-Shaw Valley, surrounded by God knows who, and these guys are playing country songs.
Right.
And I said, God, if I ever make a movie, I'm going to include this scene.
Okay. I'm going to have to pare this down.
Okay.
Where do you live?
I live in Lake Wales, Florida.
Is that on the West Coast?
Oh, no, it's in Central Florida. It's right next to Winter Haven.
How far is it from here?
About 2 hours.
All right, I'm going to be coming back up this way at the end of March.
Okay.
To go to Jacksonville. I'm going to see if I can stop by and get some more of this from you.
Okay.
So I'm going to just... All right, so were you ever injured while you were there?
Yes.
How?
Well, it goes back to chemical photography. You know, we had to get our film and our notes on the film, you know, who the people were in the pictures.
Right.
Back to Camp Eagle.
Uh-huh.
And so the way we did it was we would give it to the pilots of the helicopters that were going back and forth.
Uh-huh.
And so I was standing there with a guy from the 3rd of the 187th who was their stringer photographer for us, and we were talking about the pictures we had.
Uh-huh.
And a rocket hit a metal container that they had, it's Connex they used to call them, and they dropped it in there, and it had ammunition and medical supplies and that kind of stuff in there. And we were not far from there. The thing, probably a 122, hit it, and the guy standing next to me he took the brunt of it. You know, he's gone. But he took the brunt of it. I'm on the wrong side, it's this side.
Okay.
He took the brunt of it, and I got a piece of shrapnel here in a bad spot in the trapezoid, so I was bleeding a lot.
Yeah.
And so I got medevaced out to the USS Repose, which is a Navy hospital ship out off the coast of Da Nang. And they worked on me in the passageway. There were so many casualties coming in from that battle. And so I wasn't even in surgery. I mean, they literally worked on me in the thing.
Right there.
And it patched me up, and then I went back to Camp Eagle. And took me another day to kind of feel okay, except my head was like this. For most of the rest of my tour, I walked around like that because I didn't have anything holding my neck up. I had to have a lot of physical therapy to get that up. So that's, I mean, I consider that lucky because the guy standing next to me is not here.
I understand.
Doing an interview with you. So.
Did you get to go home after that? How long were you in the service?
24 years.
Okay. Where's Lake Wales?
Lake Wales is right next to Winter Haven. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not even going to try to finish this right now.
Okay.
This is just going to be part one. Period.
All right, there we go. Record to the cloud. Okay, and we are recording. Okay, so, okay, Cal. What year did you get to Vietnam?
I got there in December of 1968.
And the other thing that I didn't get to ask you about was your injuries. I think we probably talked about it a little bit, So you got there in 1968. Exactly where did you go when you got to Vietnam?
Oh, okay. Well, I flew into Cam Bay, and that's where they had a replacement detachment. And I flew in there and was there a couple of days. And then I flew up to Camp Eagle, Vietnam, which is a little bit north away. And I was assigned to what is now called Public Affairs, but at that time was called Army Information Office.
Okay.
And so I was assigned there. And I stayed there literally just a couple of days because the boss there, Major Horvath, wanted everybody to have the experience of going out in the field with the soldiers on patrol. So he sent me up to the 3rd Brigade at Camp Evans, and I went out with the on patrol with different units, and I did that for a couple of months. Then I was promoted to E5, and I got reassigned back to division. And that point on, I covered things that were specific assignments that I received. So if we had a VIP coming in, I covered them, covered the Bob Hope show later on. I still went out in the field on major battles. I was in the Ashaw and Vinlock Island and Dangapia, which later became infamous as Hamburger Hill. So,
Wow.
it was a fast year or so. So,
Were there a lot of casualties in your unit?
oh my gosh, yeah. You know, this is right after the Tet Offensive, which was earlier in 1968. So I was part of what they called the Tet Counteroffensive. And the biggest battle there was in Hue, and the Marines had taken the largest amount of casualties. And 101st came in and relieved them about a day before the end of that battle. And that's months before I got there, but it was a very dangerous area.
Okay.
We were, in fact, we used to climb up on the roof of our hooches at Camp Eagle every couple of nights or so and watch Camp Sally, that was the headquarters of the 2nd Brigade. Just up the road, we would watch them get mortared and rocketed. And of course, every other night, we would get mortared and rocketed and they'd be up on their roofs. We didn't have TV or radio or movies, or that was our entertainment.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how long, I don't know how to even measure or even ask the question correctly. How long were you exposed to that kind of, that violence and that engagement?
Oh, the whole time we were there. I mean, I left January 1970, sorry.
Right.
And so, I mean, I was a combat photographer, so I was always at the big battles. And when I wasn't, we were pretty much getting attacked every other day or so. So, you know, it was a kind of a never-ending sort of thing. I mean, you always slept with your weapon and a bandolier or two extra ammunition by your cot, you know, and so, you know, That's just how it was.
Okay. So, okay. How many, approximately, well, did you have any injuries from ordnance or from weapons? I know you told me you got Agent Orange.
Yeah, I didn't know that till 40 years later about the Agent Orange, but I did get wounded a little bit, unworthy of a Purple Heart apparently, but at Tangapia, which was our name, but the media dubbed it Hamburger Hill, and you know, back then we didn't have digital photography or satellites or anything like that. So,
Right.
so everything was physical. So we used film, you know, and we had to get the film back to have it processed and everything. And so what we would do is to give it to the helicopter pilots and ask them to drop it off at the information office. The aviation brigade was literally across the street and down a little bit from our hooch. And they were more than happy to do that. So we were always running back and forth to the helicopter pads. And I wasn't the only combat photographer there. Units had their own stringers, and Stars and Stripes guys were there. And so it was the only way we were able to get our film and our notes back. And I guess it was the second day I was at Tangapia. There was a helicopter coming in, and so I went up on over to the landing zone because I wanted to give about 4 rolls of film and notes to the pilot. And so I'm waiting there, and this other guy was standing next to me. And then we got a rocket in, and it hit the Connex that was holding supplies and ammunition, all kinds of stuff. And the rocket apparently exploded against the Connex, and so these little bits of white hot metal went spewing out at the speed of light, I guess. And the guy next to me was standing literally between the Connex and me, and he's not with us anymore. It's just awful. But I got a little piece in my neck, and it apparently looked worse than it was. I was bleeding a lot. And they medevaced me out to the USS Repose. It was sitting a little bit outside Da Nang Harbor. That's a Navy hospital ship. And they worked on me in the hallway there. There were so many casualties coming in. All their operating rooms were all filled with everything. So they did that, and then they sent me back, and I was unfit for duty for just a couple of days, but by then the Battle of Tangapia was over, and I went on to do other things. But yeah, so I got hurt there, and it is what it is.
Right. So I guess you lost a lot of your friends in those battles.
Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but several. I have a picture I took like the first, I think like the first week after I got promoted at Camp Eagle. We took a group shot, and I had probably the best camera, and it had a timer on it, so we put it on a tripod, and I set it for, I don't know, 10 seconds or something, and then I went and squatted down in the middle of the front row, and that group, about six or seven people didn't make it home.
I'm looking at the photo. I got the slideshow you sent me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm going to figure out how to attach, even if I have to call the people in Washington and have them attach this to your file. Don't
Oh,
worry about it.
okay.
Okay, so all in all, just over the time period that you were there, and then we're going to move on to your next duty base, about how many people do you think, you know, succumbed while you were there?
Well, I have no idea.
You have no idea. Okay.
I have no idea. I know that what the Army said at the time wasn't true. Well, for example, the reason that Hamburger Hill got its name was because of the number of casualties.
Right.
Well,
Like a meat-
I was there.
A meat grinder.
Yeah, I was there, and they were taking body bags out of there by the Chinook load. And the Chinook is one of those big dual rotor helicopters.
Yeah.
And officially, the Army said that we lost 87 soldiers. But there were more than 100 just in one load, and they were taking loads out.
Right.
So what I heard, and I have no way of confirming this, I don't know it to be a fact, I just know it's what all the personnel people that shared our hooch said, is that what they would do, that the commanding generals, all the division had an agreement, if they took X amount of casualties, they would transfer the excess to these other units. So it wouldn't look so bad, you know, for them. And I only know what I heard, you know, so.
I understand.
But I know when we saw the official Army statistics, you know, it said in the Stars and Stripes we got one day that 87 soldiers died. Everybody broke up laughing.
Okay.
So, because anybody who was there will tell you there was, you know, they lost 87 people an hour some days.
Right. Right. Okay. So how long were you there altogether? A year?
Yeah, I was there 13 months. That was a normal tour. Yeah.
And then where was your next duty base after that?
Well, I thought I was going to Europe. And when I got back to the US and was in processing in from Vietnam at Fort Lewis, this Spec 4 asked me if I was interested in going to school. And I said words to the effect, you mean an Army school? And he said, no. He said the Army and all the services have bought seats at civilian technical schools. And you're a 84 Bravo, and we have some seats at the Brooks Institute of Photography in California, if you want to go. And I said, well, I really want to go to Europe. And he said, well, you'll go to Europe after this. This is essentially a delay in route. And I said, oh, okay. So I went to the Brooks Institute for 9 months, got a certificate in photojournalism. And then I went to Europe. And I was in Europe just about 3.5 years.
Okay, so just clear it up in my brain there real quick. You initially were in the Air Force first, right?
No.
Oh, okay. So you were in the
I've
Army.
never been in anything except the Army. That was
Only the Army. Okay. Okay, I got you confused with somebody else. No big deal. Don't worry about it. Oh, that was Colonel Johnson. Okay, so you went to this school. You're practically a civilian. You know,
Yeah, I really was, because we didn't wear any uniforms or anything.
And you were at the Brooks Institute in what city?
In Santa Barbara, California.
And how long was that school?
9 months. It was a 9-month certificate course.
So where did that, after you finished that certification in photography, where did that take you?
Well, I certainly learned a lot more about different kinds of photography, like studio photography and portrait photography, and things that we didn't learn at the Army school in 6 weeks. So it was a very interesting time. I learned a lot, and I went from there to Europe, and I think partially because I was a graduate of that school, I got assigned to Stars and Stripes Europe, got to work for Red Grandy, who was the photo chief there, and he had been Eisenhower's personal photographer in World War II. And so he had great stories and things. I mean, he just kept everyone mesmerized for hours. And he was quite a character. He only just recently died. He was like 90-some years old. But he was quite a character. Learned a lot from him, too.
Cool. Okay, so where were you stationed now after Santa Barbara?
I was in Darmstadt, which the Stars and Stripes is in a little suburb of Darmstadt, Germany, called Wiesheim. And so that's where we were at, right on the edge of Darmstadt.
How long were you there, and what kind of material did you cover?
Well, I was there about 3.5 years, and
Okay.
covered when I started. I was in the city room, and that meant that I had a beat, and then I would do special assignments that the editors wanted me to do. So part of my beat was the 7th Infantry Division Airborne, which was in Bad Kreuznach, which is where they manufacture Leicas. And so that was an interesting tour, going there. And then they had another part of the division was in Mainz, Germany, which is right across the river from Wiesbaden, which is where I met Barbara, who I later married, and we just celebrated our 48th anniversary. So,
Congratulations.
oh, thanks. Yeah, August the 9th.
Gee whiz.
Anyway, so that was part of my beat. I went to Berlin about every 2 months and did a series of stories. I got to meet Sean Connery while I was in Berlin. He was
Wow.
there. He was there promoting a movie, and so I've had some interesting things along the way. And then about a year after I was there, I switched over to the features department, and I worked for Bernie Kirchhoff. And I did more in-depth stories, more photo essays. That was a very interesting time. When you're in a newsroom, you're typing away and captioning photos and laying out pages, and it kind of never stops. But when you're in features, you have an opportunity to do research and to spend a lot more time on layout and processing and things. And so that was an interesting time. And then I went back to the news department after my year there and finished up there. And while I was there, the Bader Meinhof gang was out terrorizing everybody. And so I went on a couple of police chases after them. So it was all in all kind of interesting.
Okay. Up to this point, did you have any problem? You probably had some issues while you were in the war zone, but otherwise, did you have any problem staying in? Well, you were never a prisoner of war, correct?
Oh no.
Did you have any problem staying in touch with your family at home?
In Vietnam, I did. I mean, everybody did. But,
Right.
But in Europe, I really didn't. We had access to the international telephone cable, and it wasn't that bad. We still wrote letters and sent cards and things, but it really wasn't a problem.
Okay. Did you have all the supplies that you needed wherever you were up to this point? Was that ever an issue?
Well, not in Europe. We at that time in the in the early 70s. We had been in Europe since 1944, so there was plenty of time to set up logistics and all of that kind of infrastructure, you know.
Right.
So we didn't really have any of those issues there. Vietnam, we had some serious issues.
Okay, so you said in Darmstadt you were there for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, about 3.5 years.
Okay. So where did you go after that?
Well, after that, I thought I was going to Fort Benning to be the editor of the base newspaper there, the Bayonet, which was a really good assignment. You know,
Right.
Benning was, you know, at that time the largest base in the Army, and it was a training base. They had all kinds of things going on.
Was that in Georgia?
And, pardon me?
Where was Fort Benning?
Oh, it's in Columbus, Georgia.
Right, that's what I said. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and so we're really excited about going there. And we came back from Europe and we went there, and the officer in charge and I met, and he said, go out, find an apartment or leased housing or something, and check in with me every day. And then after you're settled, you know, we'll get started. I said, okay. And so Barbara and I went out and we were looking at apartments and houses and things. And I would call in every afternoon and check in. And I called in like about the second day. And he said, oh, I'm so glad you called. You have to come in right now. Come over to the office. And I said, okay. So we drove back on base and went to the office right there in Infantry Hall. And he said, I just got notice that you've been reassigned to Fort Sheridan, Illinois. And I said, I never even heard of Fort Sheridan.
Right.
And he says, well, it's somewhere around Chicago. That's all I know.
Right.
But I'm expecting your orders to come in this afternoon on teletype. And I don't know why or how or, you know, whatever, but don't unpack. And I'll see to it that your household goods, when they arrive here, I'll have them sent up to Fort Sheridan.
Right.
And I said, okay. I went back to the car. Barbara and I went out and had dinner, and what little stuff we had unpacked, we put in the car, and we drove from Georgia up to Chicago. And then we had to, you know, this is before Waze and navigation systems and cars, and we had to stop police officers every mile or so and ask them how to get to Fort Sheridan.
Right.
And we finally get there, and they were still. It was the headquarters of the recruiting command, and it had been the U.S. Army Recruiting Service before the Volunteer Army started in '73. It had been in Hampton, Virginia. And it became a 2-star command, and they moved it to Fort Sheridan. And so they were still unloading trucks and doing things when we got there. And so it turns out, I found out that one of the guys who I had worked with in Europe, made colonel and was the head of advertising and sales promotion for the new recruiting command, and he wanted me on his team. And so that was how and because they were a new command just starting up, they had their pick of anybody. So that was how we got up to Fort Sheridan, and had a wonderful time there. Was there just over a year, and there was a change of command, and I worked directly for Brigadier General Bob Montague, and he retired, and his replacement was a guy who had just made his first start, General Steele, who had been the commander of the 75th Rangers at Fort Polk. And he came up, and I was at the high-bye party at General Montague's house with Barbara, and his aide came over to me and said he wanted to talk to me, and we went kind of over in the corner, and he said, General Steele appreciates your your work here for General Montague and wishes you only the best, but he prefers not to have any enlisted people on his staff. So find yourself a job anywhere in the command, and we'll see to it that you get that spot. But you got to be out of Dodge in 30 days. So.
Right? Yeah. Hello.
I said, okay. So I went home and I thought about all the people in the command that I had met during the past year. And one of the people that stood out to me was Sergeant First Class Bill Fitzpatrick. And he was the station commander of the Army Recruiting Station in Santa Ana, California. And I called him to see if he remembered me. He said he did. And I asked him if he had any opening slots. And he said he did. And he gave me the line number. And I said, don't let anybody take that line number. So I went over to the general's office, saw his aide, gave him the line number. And sure enough, I get a set of orders to go to Santa Ana, California. And but I was going as a recruiter, not as a photographer. So I had to stop for 8 weeks at Fort Harrison and go through recruiter school.
Right.
So we did that, and I went on to California and Santa Ana, and we were there for 3 years. So.
Okay. So what was where did you get to travel while you were in Europe?
Oh, we got to travel every place, both officially and unofficially. Barb was very heavy into Grand Prix racing. She had the stopwatches and the clipboards and everything. And so we went to several Grand Prix races around Europe and over the years, and we were there. And I liked shooting the old castles, and so we did a lot of that. And back then, American Express was like the only civilian company on bases, and they literally had a bank and a travel agency, and so we went on some American Express tours, went on some bus tours, we went on some train tours, and we went to Birch's Garden, and we went to Oktoberfest, and we kind of traveled all around. Barbara liked London, and so we would go over there just for the day. You know, from Frankfurt to London was maybe a 45-minute flight. You'd fly over and get off and get on the bus, and they would take you to Harrods, which was a really big department store there. And then they take you to lunch, and then they would take you to a West End matinee show. London's West End is like Broadway is here. And so you see a matinee, and then you drive back to the airport, get on the plane, and you're home for dinner. And that was like $50 a person, you know. Uh-huh. So we did several of those. I got a chance to go to the Greek islands and to Greece. I was there when the Kennedy was on fire, and right outside of Athens in Piraeus, which is the port of Athens. Covered that, landed on the deck in a helicopter, there's smoke coming out of every place.
Right.
that was kind of interesting. And went to Augsburg several times, and we went to Belgium. On my beat, I had NATO headquarters, so we went up there and up to Holland and everything. couple of times. So yeah, we got a chance to travel everywhere except Scandinavia. That was going to be our cruise, and then I got orders, back for the States. So
Okay. So I think we left off at Santa Ana in California.
okay, yeah,
All right. So how long were you there? And then where did you go after that?
okay. Well, I was there 3 years. Was promoted while I was there, and also got my master's degree while I was there. And I went weekends
What did you get a master's degree in?
in management.
Okay.
It's kind of a funny story. I don't know if you're interested in that.
Go ahead.
Well, the Army had this program called Project Ahead, and it was an acronym for Army Help for Education and Development. And so if you wanted to get a college degree, I mean, an undergraduate degree, all you had to do is to sign a piece of paper that would let these different schools evaluate your personnel file and see how many credits they would give you. And so, okay, so I did that. It took me about a year and a half after I got my evaluation back, going at night to get a bachelor's degree. And some terms it was 2 nights a week, sometimes it was 3 nights a week. Anyway, got that, and 6 guys in our district were in that program, and there was a I hate to call it a graduation party, but that's actually what it was, in the commander's conference room. And our commander was a lieutenant colonel, and his wife had made cookies and punch and all that sort of thing. And after the awarding of the diplomas and the toast to the Army and all that, he came over to me and he said, "How would you like to get a master's degree?" And I kind of looked at him and so, "Are you selling them?" I mean, I had no idea what he was talking about. And he said, "Oh no," he says, "there's a program in San Diego, and it's for working executives, and it's every other weekend for a year and a half. And if you're successful, then you get awarded a master's degree in management." And I said, "Well, it sounds interesting, but I work for a guy that sometimes makes me work on the weekends." And he knew I was talking about him, so he said, "If you go in this program with me, because I'm going to do it," he says, "I'll make sure you don't work those weekends." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, how much is it going to cost?" He said, "Oh, the Army's paying for it."
Right. Yeah.
I said, "Well, the price is right, and I have your word that, I'll make every class. So, where do I sign?" And so
Good.
we literally did that. And we went down every other weekend. Sometimes Barb came with us and sometimes not, but we stayed at Miramar Naval Air Station at the officers' quarters, because he was an officer, so he got us in there. And we had a really good year and a half. One of our professors was Paul Hersey, who was the Hersey of Hersey and Blanchard, who literally wrote the book on situational leadership and everything. So I got to be friends with him, and anyway, so got my master's degree right before we pulled out of Santa Barbara.
Uh-huh.
Colonel Lascola, who was the commander then, wanted to get a master's degree because he was getting ready to retire, and he wanted to supplement his retirement income by teaching 100 and 200 level courses at community colleges in California, which you could do if you had a master's degree. So that was kind of his plan. And Anyway, I had gotten a master's degree. I was an E6 on the E7 list then. And I start getting phone calls from colonels wanting to know if I would come and work with them. I was one of a handful of NCOs that had master's degrees. It was about literally only six or seven of the whole Army.
Wow.
So the first call I got was from a colonel at Fort Ord at the Army Organizational Effectiveness School. And they were starting an NCO course and wanted me to be on that team that was starting up. And that really sounded exciting. And we love California. And Barbara's brother lived up in the Fresno, California area, which was not very far from Fort Ord. And so we thought, oh, this will be a really good assignment, you know?
Yeah.
and you know, we chatted about it and found out some more details and whatever. And then my phone rang again, and it was Colonel Gelke. You may not be familiar with that name, but Colonel Gelke was, when he was a captain, was my bus commander in Korea.
Uh-huh.
And he was the guy who I let down because all the photographers were shooting out the windows. And I went and reported to him that I wasn't able to stop that. He told me it was okay. That was their job, and he knew they were going to do it. But, you know, he had to say what he said.
Right.
And so we had kind of remained, you know, friends on and off, but there was some kind of a list, you know, published of NCOs who were on the promotion list and their short bios and stuff. So he called me and he said, I don't know if you remember me. And I said, oh, yes, sir, I remember you. I'm surprised you remembered me. But he said, how'd you like to be an instructor at the Defense Information School at Fort Harrison? And I thought about that, and I said, gee, I didn't know they had, you know, a photo school there. He says, well, Department of Defense has made a deal with the Air Force, and the Department of Defense photojournalism school is at Randolph Air Force Base. And we're going to bring that course here to Defense Information School at Fort Harrison. So I'd like you to be on that team. And so I said, okay, I got to get back to you. I do have something else going. So I told you know, Barbara about the call, and she says, let's do it. And I said, I thought you wanted to stay in California. And she says, well, I do. But, you know, my parents live an hour away from Fort Harrison, in Dayton, Ohio, right on Route 70.
Right.
And I said, so that's what you want to do? And she said, that would be my choice. She said, it's your assignment, but you're asking me which one I want, that'd be it. So that's what we did. We went to Fort Harrison. Barb was with IRS then, and they transferred her to the Indianapolis office, and I was there at Fort Harrison for 4 years, and it turned out to be a wonderful assignment outside of the daily duties. I was able to get another graduate degree at night there, and
In what?
in educational management.
Okay.
And I have to tell you about that. I was probably one of the best photographers in the Army.
Okay.
Turns out I wasn't a very good teacher. I mean, I knew everything, and I had done most things, but I wasn't very good at transferring that.
Right.
And after a couple of months, I went to Colonel Helke and reported to him and said, look, I know I'm not doing very well here. And if you want to replace me, I completely understand. And he said, he looked me in the eye and he said, do you believe in school? And I said, yes. Do you believe in education? I said, yes. He said, well, why don't you go to school and learn how to be a better teacher?
Right.
And I said, can I do that? And he said, sure. He said, go over to the education center down the street. I'm sure that they have college courses in teaching and learning theory and all of that.
Right.
And maybe that'll help you figure out how to do things better. And I thought, well, it can't hurt, you know. And so I started taking courses in education.
Right.
And I found out that I got more interested in that than I was in photography. It was a whole new thing for me, you know. And I really got into it. And while you know, I did that. The school was going through accreditation to be able to award college credit for its courses, a civilian college credits. So I got selected to be on the team that was putting together the evaluation package.
Uh-huh.
And so I did my special project, which is actually just another thesis, on evaluating adult education programs, and which was used in our thing. So I got my EDS in educational management, and got promoted to ET7, and then I got commissioned in the Army Reserves with the concurrent active duty, and I headed up the team that did the Public Affairs Officer Course Reserve component. And so that was a 2-week course that we did all summer for Reserve Public Affairs officers from all over the country. So that was my final thing. And as it turned out, it was my last assignment as in the regular Army.
Right.
So in 81, I went off of active duty, and I was in a reserve unit there at Fort Harrison at the Reserve Center. And most of the people in that unit had been former students of mine. So
Wow. Okay.
so it was kind of an interesting experience. And while I was doing that, I was, you know, 1 weekend a month, I was up at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana, about an hour and a half's drive north, and working on my doctoral degree, which I got in 1982. And that's when we left Indiana and got my first civilian job at the University of Alabama. So that's how we got to the South.
Okay. Was that the last duty station? Your last?
No, because I did 3 AGR tours, which are active duty tours of at least a year.
Where'd you go?
Well, went to a country that you may have heard of called Honduras. And the Army Combat Engineers were, their National Guard and Reserve units were building a farm-to-market road in Honduras. And I didn't know much about engineering roads then, but you have to do things in a particular sequence. You know, you have to dig the stuff up, and then you have to grade it, and then you have to crush rocks, and then you have to put that down. You know, it's just, so you have to have the right units at the right time, you know, in the right sequence down there. So I was the S1, which is personnel officer, which was what I did as a branch. I was in the AG, Adjutant General branch, and supposedly I was a large systems officer, and but I had spent all my officer time up to then in public affairs. But this gave me a chance to get promoted because I was actually in a branch assignment. And so I did that, and then a couple of years later, I did an ROTC tour as an instructor in West Virginia. And then I went to Kansas, my last tour, and did a job as a S1, S3 at a newly created personnel replacement battalion.
Where was that?
I'm sorry?
Where is that second one? That's the second one, right?
Yeah, that was my second branch assignment, yeah.
Where?
It was in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it was actually at McConnell Air Force Base. But right at the back gate of McConnell Air Force Base is a big Army Reserve headquarters building, and that's where I was at. So we were there a year, and I retired from there, and I had 24 active in by then, so I retired from there. And the guy who was my weekend warrior boss was a professor at Wichita State University. And he knew I was retiring, and he asked me if I wanted to stay in Wichita. And I said, sure. You know, we had a nice house and friends, and the base was right there. And so he said, okay. He says, shoot me a resume when you can. And I said, okay. And so I generated up a resume and mailed it to him. And next thing I know, I get a phone call from the personnel director of the city of Wichita. And apparently I was a finalist in a national search for a training director. And I went there. They were having interviews. I was one of 3 people they interviewed. And I went there for my interview. And when I walked in the room, there were 3 people there: the deputy city manager and personnel director, and this reserve colonel slash Wichita State professor was on the hiring board. So I knew at that moment that if I could refrain from cursing for 20 minutes or so, I probably had the job, you know. I was able to do that and got the job and was there about a year and a half. And then I was recruited by the state of Florida to head up their Division of Public Health to be their training administrator. We did all the medical, dental, ophthalmology, nursing, recertifications, management training, all that stuff. And that was up in Tallahassee, Florida. And that's how we got to Florida. So.
Okay. So, okay, just real quick, you said that there were 3 TDYs. There was one in Wichita. Where were the other 2 at?
Okay, the first one was in Honduras.
Right, that's right. The next one?
And the next one was ROTC duty at West Virginia State University.
And the third one?
I'm sorry?
The third one, go ahead.
And the third one was at the 87th ARCOM, Army Reserve Command in Wichita, Kansas.
Gotcha. Okay. So now you're saying that that was your final. Where was your final duty base?
That was at McConnell Air Force Base
Right.
of all places.
Okay.
So yeah, actually, retired. My retirement ceremony was actually up at Fort Riley, Kansas.
Okay.
So
So then you wound up getting a job in Florida, in Tallahassee.
well, I wound up staying in Wichita just over another year, and then I was recruited by the state of Florida in Tallahassee, and so we came down to Tallahassee, Florida, and was there for about a year and a half, and then we're reading the Sunday paper one Sunday morning, and Barb said, "Look, your name's in the paper." I said, "It is," and she handed it to me, and I looked, and my boss had been fired by the governor, and everybody who worked for him was also fired, and there were like 55 of us, and we found out about it.
What year was that?
In the Sunday paper, yeah. So,
What year was that?
oh gosh, I don't know. I know that I spent the next couple of months making sure the people that worked in our office got placed in other agencies around state government.
Right.
And then I had done a couple of things up at the University of Georgia, and I called them, and they offered me a job up with the university. And
What governor fired all those people?
I'm sorry?
Who did what governor fired all those people?
Oh, Lawton Childs.
Okay.
Yeah, his chief of staff had some kind of falling out with our boss.
Oh.
And, and so, those are arguments you never win, no matter who's right or wrong.
Right.
And to this day, I don't know what the argument was about. So,
Okay.
so
now after that, you got a new job where?
at University of Georgia up in Athens, Georgia.
And what was your job there?
Well, I was with the government training division,
Uh-huh.
and they're a part of the political science department was this institute of government, and they provided all kinds of training to city and county governments.
Right.
So I was one of about 4 people who went out and did that. But I wasn't very happy there from the very first day. And they had hired me to upgrade all their training materials. That was supposed to be my job. And when I got there, they said, "Oh no, we want you to go out and and travel around the state and and teach all these courses." And I said, "You mean teach all these courses with these outdated, awful material?" And they said, "Yeah." So I wasn't very happy there. I stayed there a year and walked away, and went to Atlanta, which is capital of Georgia, and made some contacts there and started up a little consulting group, and we worked there for a while, and I went to a military lunch, and I met a guy who we just got in a conversation over lunch, and he said, "Have you ever thought about adjunct teaching?" I said, "No, I hadn't." And he said, "Well, somebody with your experience and military background, you could work for the same university I do. And we go around on weekends and teach at military bases." And I said, "Oh, well, that sounds interesting. I could probably do that." So he said, "If you're interested, I'll get you an interview." I said, "Okay." So I sent him a copy of my resume, and next thing I know, I get a call for an interview. It turned out to be Central Michigan University. And I worked for them the next 17 years. Loved every minute of it.
Okay.
And then 5 years ago, next month, I retired from them, and we came down here and retired. So that really brings us to the present, I guess.
Gotcha. So I just got a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
How did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Well, how could it not? I mean, I
Right.
spent a total of 24 years, in the military and in the Army in particular. And so, yeah, it has influenced the way I look at war, having been a participant, and how I look at the military in general. I have to say, in all fairness, that the military, in particular the Army, has changed a lot since I was in.
Is that good or bad?
Oh, for the better.
Okay.
Absolutely. There isn't any doubt about that. Their qualifications for different jobs and assignments are handled much more professionally. They pay a lot more attention to education. It's no longer an oddity to be an NCO in the Army and have a master's degree. That's not unusual today.
Right.
So it really has changed a lot.
Okay. And last question. How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, I like to think that I made a very good civilian. I mean, coming out of 24 years of military service, it's, when I went in, I was right out of high school. So, essentially it was the only job I had, for 24 years. So,
Right.
So, clearly it shaped my life. I still communicate and meet with people who I met, along my military journey. We're all still friends, and some of us are even neighbors. That the guy that lives one street over from me on Waterford was with me in Vietnam. So yeah, I mean, I think all of us are shaped by our experiences and things. It certainly, for a long time, it made me sort of harsh about people who didn't pay attention to detail and wouldn't follow up on things, or said things like, well, it's okay for government work. That just really irritated the heck out of me.
Right.
It's just the wrong attitude to have. I mean, what could be more important than helping our country be even more successful than it is? So, I think it shaped. Yeah, I'm a little mellower now. I'm older, but I learned how to prepare for things. I learned how to do follow up. I learned how to pay attention to detail. I got a sense of what was really important and what was just nice, and I learned to be generous, and I think I learned to be respectful. We used to say in the Army that everybody only had one color, and it was green.
Right.
And so we weren't white or black or whatever. We were all green, and so I still live by that. and if you're an American, really doesn't matter where you came from. My grandparents came from Poland and Russia,
Uh-huh.
and I like to joked that I'm the proud descendants of two military deserters.
Okay.
Both of them deserted from the Tsar's army.
Okay.
And so yeah,
Okay.
in fact, their family name literally means I am from Poznan, which is a border city between Poland and Russia.
Oh, okay.
So it's an Ellis Island name, if you're familiar with that term.
I'm from yes, I'm yes, but I didn't know that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for a wonderful interview.
Oh, okay.
And I also, well, I should have thanked you first for your service. Thank you for your service.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been out now longer than I was in. So.
Right. Okay. What was that last little part about your parents? Finish that.
About my parents?
Yeah, you
My
said.
grandparents.
Yeah. Oh, your grandparents. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Both of them deserted the Tsar's army. And my father's father, my grandfather, was from Poznan. And when he finally got to America, in the early 1900s, they had tags. And he thought his name was on the tab in English because he didn't read or write English.
Right.
But actually, it was something else. It was, and the guard kept asking him what his name was, and he thought he was asking him where he was from.
Right.
So he kept saying Posner, and that's where all the Posners come from.
Right.
Okay. And it's an Ellis Island name. I mean, if you go to Poznan, everybody's a Posner because that's
Right.
where they live. But there isn't any family there named Posner.
Okay.
So.
All right. And was that it? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's, yeah. I mean, I just think it's a great American story.
No, well, I'm sure that a lot of that happened also just like that,
Oh yeah. Happened back then, and when ever I meet someone, they say, "Oh, I know Jerry Posner in New Jersey." Is he related to you? I don't think so. It's an Ellis Island name. There's 10,000 people.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.